Orghe, le slide sono già su Blackboard?
Non penso.
Ce le
Le
puoi
metto...
mettere?
Sì.
Bravo, metticele. E anche ti ho mandato le slide di Torghe, se le puoi mettere
Ok, tutte e due.
online. Bravo.
Ok. Ho cominciato la registrazione, quindi
Okay, so let's talk English.
yeah, if when the teacher wants to start, it's okay to start. So in 5 minutes.
Hello. Hello, Latizia.
Hello, Etishre, how are you?
Hello.
Yes, so now I think I'm audible. My volume was on mute. Yeah. Orges, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well, teacher. Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
So we start in a couple of minutes.
3 minutes.
Yes.
To be precise, yeah.
I don't remember, Etishre, from which country you come from.
I'm from India.
India, okay. From which town?
It's very near to Calcutta, but I'm from a state called Odisha.
Okay. I see, because now I have this map in my office.
It's in
I
the
try
eastern
to...
part of India.
Okay, so east, I see.
It's just below Calcutta. Yeah.
Okay, next time you come to my office, you have to show me on the map.
Yes. Yeah, so it is 16:15 and we can start. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third lecture from the customer-driven course. And today's session is about Agile and Scrum, and it will be taken by our dear Letizia and Orikas. So as some of you might be knowing, Letizia is a professor at our Department of Computer Science, and Orgis is a PhD student from the ED. So I hope you'll have a nice time with Letizia and Orgis. And please, Letizia, you can take over and you can start with the lecture. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So as Itishre said, I am a professor. I've been a professor here for some years, so I don't bore. And also I introduce myself to you when we have had our kickoff. And I have been working with software engineering for many years. If you are interested in hearing my ideas in software engineering, the most recent one, I have a podcast out in this Learn.tech series that is about software engineering for sustainability. Maybe if you want, you can hear it on Spotify or whatever. The link is here. The slide are already on the blackboard. And so I would like to give the word to Orges. Who are you? What is a PhD student? Why you are here? So please, Orges, tell us some words about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Letizia. Yes, you are correct. I am a PhD student at ED, and my PhD consists mainly in software engineering practices in software startups and how we can migrate these practices also to education context. Before doing the PhD, I was also in industry working with software development at different levels, to be honest, starting as a developer first and then moving forward towards doing project management and adopting Agile and Scrum methodologies for almost 6 years. So from my background from before, it is in industry, but it has also been closely related to education. So I've been doing things in parallel, and now I'm doing this PhD at Computer Science Department at ED. And of course, Letizia is my supervisor that she didn't mention.
And where are you from, Orges?
I am from Albania, from Tirana, the capital of Albania.
But you studied at Polytechnic.
Yeah, and I studied before. I did computer engineering, actually, not computer science, but computer engineering in my bachelor's and my master's at the Polytechnic of Torino, Politecnico di Torino, for a certain period. My bachelor was in Italian, while my master's was in English. So I had sort of a mixed degree.
Yes, and I have to add that Orges speaks Italian like Italian people, so you cannot hear the difference, but maybe you don't know Italian, so you don't hear the difference anyway. And Orges has been here for 2 years, and we already made a lot of things together with him and the other PhD students. And yes, I hope that we will know each other with some of you students better in the future. And Orges is also supervisor of group 14.
Group 14.
And we will give this lecture together. We are in fact in 2 different offices because we found out that it's better for the sound that we use the microphone. And we are near, but in 2 different offices now. So going ahead, the structure of this lecture, I made the structure and Orges made most of the rest. And the first part is about, we are very interested in knowing what you know about Agile. And so we made an Mentimeter that we will show in a while. So I want to tell you what I know, what Orges know, and then we will have an overview of the Agile field. And then we will go in depth into Scrum, XP, Lean, Kanban, testing. And then in the end, I think you should stay until the end because we will give some examples from previous years. We will criticize them and we will inspire you to reflect about these examples and possibly doing better than the other students have done. Because as you for sure have learned in life and in work and in studies, it's not enough to do what other people has done before us. We have to do better. I cannot just do the same things that the other professors did before me. I have to try to do something better, and the same applies to you as student and will apply for you when you start working. So we have all these examples for the last years, and they are here not so that we copy what they have done, but we do better than what it has been done before. So now I ask you to open your browser, either on your PC or on your phone, what you want, on this address menti.com, and you put this code 8841317, and in the meantime I will share my screen with the Mentimeter. And wait a moment. Where is it? Wait, I have to stop share first. Yes. Share screen. Yes. So you see my screen, Orges, right now with the Mentimeter?
Yeah.
Yes. What do you know about the waterfall model? You are very quick. You are already writing. Somebody say, I don't know nothing. And so it's a bit good. So I will tell you something. And while you reflect and write, I can tell you that this lecture before has been given by Torger Dingsøy, that is one of the international experts in Agile. So it was a bit difficult for us to come after him, but we don't know exactly what you know about Agile. So it can be that this lecture maybe is not needed anymore, because now you do a lot of Agile in software engineering course. So this is an experiment. We want to know what you know about software engineering and about Agile, so that afterwards we will reflect about this. When you say no one has been using it for the last 20 years, I really contradict you in a way. This is funny. And it's like a waterfall, continues to task until finish. Yes, that's really slow and error prone. Yes, not good fit. Okay, outdated. We have 38 answer. I think people is still answering. 40 should be avoided. It is rigid, it's more planned and with longer phases than Scrum. Very good answer you are giving. Not agile, works only with static circumstances, outdated, inflexible. Yes, it seems that you know a lot. I know that is a one cycle work methodology. There's not much room to change. It is all, yes. I think you are, you know a lot about what waterfall model is. So we go to the second Mentimeter. Or maybe I will wait a bit, because I see that people is giving good answer. Early method in software development inspired by classical models of product development, but is not very flexible. It has huge risk. Very good when it comes to software development, because it does not account for changing requirements. Very good. I would not manage to explain it better than you do. Thank you. So we go to the next slide. That is, what do you know about Agile development? And here I am in Norwegian, jeg er spent. I am excited to know what you know. So, yeah, I hope we will have something new to come with, but flexible, Agile, yes. Take your time. designed to be highly flexible to accommodate changing requirements and to allow development while not all requirements are known. This point of changing requirements, I guess we have to write down because we will have to comment about this during the lecture.
Yeah, sure.
Changing requirement, adapts to changing requirement, iterative.
Changing or adapting to requirements.
Because they write adapts to changing requirement. They write several times about this concept of changing the requirements that are changing. Okay, it's very flexible. You need to account for changes in the environment. Really overhyped development methodology isn't always easy to implement, but it's flexible and accounts for changing requirements. Okay. The developers don't fixate themselves on to define and understand the project. It consists of many. Oh, sorry. Okay, I think I will go ahead now, unless somebody protests. You can speak. If anybody wants to speak, is just unmute yourself and speak. In these 6 months with digital meeting, I found out that the risk is not that people speak too much. The risk is that people speak too little. So if anybody wants to say something, just take the voice and ask. It requires some courage, but we are not dangerous. We would like to have a nice environment, even if we are not in the same room. But anyway, I go ahead. And the next question that is something that is very interesting to me and to Orges for his research. What do the customers say about development methodology? Because and I am amazed and a bit puzzled that they don't say anything, because this course is called Customer Driven, and we would like to learn from the industry. So it's not that I know everything and I want to tell her do this, do that. We would like the industry to influence, and it's the first time somehow that we ask this question, and I'm really surprised that they say so little about the development methodology. We have to work more with this aspect.
Lots of nothing.
Yes.
When there is nothing, there is a lot of opportunities to change and to improve. Yes,
there is a gap. So we should push the customers to say more about their development methodology, and so that we learn more from them. But so now we know more. Somebody says Scrum, somebody say the use of Agile, but there is a lot of nothing that tells us that we should be more demanding with respect to our customers. We go ahead and we have which are the main differences between Agile and Waterfall. You have already answered, but reflect once more about these differences. You have some minutes to answer here as well. Sprint, yes, good answer. Orges, do you see something you want to comment on this?
Yeah, I totally agree with the big figure there, flexibility. That's a crucial point when you have agile planning and when you have a waterfall planning for a project. Basically, you have to confront between, is it about people or is it about processes, or is it about planning ahead and sticking to a plan, or can you change and adapt? So flexibility, it's a key point. And of course, there are many others that I see, and I sort of have the intuition that people are leaning towards describing more what Agile does better. But we can't really say if Agile does everything we need in every context. So that's something we have to discuss for later, like you said.
Yes, hopefully we have something new to say.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I go ahead. And then I have the last slide is the only multiple choice that, that we have. Which of these statements is true? There is only one that is true. So the first one is Scrum is mandatory in Agile development. XP means extra programming. You can apply Lean development to all Agile. You must choose between Scrum, XP, Lean, Kanban, test-driven development. Okay, it seems that you have spotted okay, I was a bit stupid when I made this multiple choice, because I should have
yeah, you should have shown the results before.
Yes, yes. I'm not like the multiple choice person. I am more for the open questions as before. But anyway, yes, you get it right. So the Mentimeter is finished. We will try to look at this data. And you know that you have, when we finish our lecture, you have the evaluation of the lecture. And in the evaluation, you will also be able to give us even more feedback than you gave now. So I can go back to our lecture now, and from slide, yes, so we were here. Okay, so we asked you, what do you know about Agile? And now you can ask, what do you know about Agile? I like very much this sentence, I know nothing. When there are conflicts, when people want to show how much they know, one of my techniques is to say with my accent, I know nothing. And the more I learn, the more I work, the more I understand that I know very little. And so how do I deal with this? I try to employ, to interact with smart people, especially with the students and the PhD students. And for example, in this case, I asked Orges for help because he has real experience with 6 years in the industry. I have 2 years in the industry myself, but it's such a long time ago that Agile did not exist. But of course, I have experience with customer-driven project and yeah, running this kind of project, but I have not been inside the industry as a programmer or a project manager for many, many years. So what do I know? My PhD work in the ancient time was about process modeling, and process modeling was also a reaction after the waterfall model. At that time, we thought that instead of having the waterfall, that each organization should have the possibility to define their own process. And so we were researching how to enable the different organizations to define their own process. But then in 2000, a group of 70 men, imagine that, without any research back then, there were 7 practitioners, they sit down, they make the Agile Manifesto, and it becomes so popular that 20 years later, we are still learning and still using the Agile methodology. There is a poem that I like very much. It says, yesterday is history, tomorrow is mystery, today is a gift, that is why it's called present. And we will try not to focus so much on history here. And I will try not to tell you what I think will be the future of software engineering, because probably it will not be. But I want to, yeah, if you hear my podcast, or if you just use now 1 minute to listen to me, I think that, I believe that the future of software engineering is to look more into societal issues, how software can help the society. And the technological trends are, of course, AI, as many of you choose AI, but also blockchain. We are investing a lot in new projects about blockchain in our group, and security, privacy, and ethics. So if you ask me, where are we going in software engineering? I think we are going in this direction. This lecture is not about this, but just to show where we are in history, and just to show you on the right side how an a waterfall model looks like. And all of you, I understand from the answer in Mentimeter, knew from before about the waterfall model. So we go ahead. And when I say that I don't know nothing, as a researcher, our goal as professor and so on is not to know everything about everything. It is to know how to search, to know how to produce knowledge. And we use a lot search engines, like, for example, Google Scholars. And if you go in Google Scholar and you look for agile development, you get more than 600,000 results. So there are more than 600,000 sources, papers, book, whatever, about Agile. You understand that is a very big topic. We know something, but there is a lot that, of course, we do not know. And if another tool that I use a lot to see where the trends are going, for sure you are doing the same. This tool is Google Trend. And Google Trends start in 2004, and you see that Agile, the blue one, has kept it stable as a trend since 2004, while Scrum has increased a lot, and that's why many people think about Scrum now before they think about Agile. Many people think that Scrum is Agile because Scrum has become very popular and has increased its popularity during the year more than Agile. Orges, do you want to comment anything about this?
Yeah, it's one of the potential frameworks that you can use in Agile. And as you say, it's quite popular and it's lightweight and it has all the characteristics to be well understood. However, there are challenges also to implement it. And I think we are going to look into that a bit later. But your point is good. When people search, they want to search for practical knowledge and practical things. So Scrum goes into that, while Agile is a more theoretical context of the whole different potential frameworks that you can use. And we'll talk about that very soon, I guess.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So Torger Dingsø, who was giving this lecture before, we have put his lecture, the slides of his lecture already online in the Blackboard, so you can also compare between our slides and his slides. He's one of the international experts in Agile development. If you go in Scholar, you see that he has published a lot of papers that are cited thousands of times. And we are very proud to say that Torger will join. I made a mistake, not from the 1st of January, but from the 1st of October, he will join ED NTNU full-time. So for those of you who are interested in working with Agile, master thesis, whatever, they should contact Torger from when he starts, because again, he is one of, for sure, the best in Norway and one of the best in the world. We go ahead, and now we are finished with the section 1, what do we know and what we don't know. And now we will have an overview of the Agile. I chose one of the many videos that are out there on the internet about Agile to show it, to see it together with you. And also we have many slides that mainly Orges will go through. So we start from this video. I hope that you will hear and that you will not get bored. And it's 11 minutes. This video has been seen 2 million of times, 1,910,000. And I have seen it a couple of times. I think it's good, but of course, it's only 10 minutes. I hope we will do better later, but it's a baseline to have a common understanding about what is Agile. So enjoy the video. It lasts 11 minutes.
Hello, I'm Mark. And often this means helping teams understand what it means to develop in an agile way. In this video, we're going to answer the question, what is agile? And just as important, we'll discuss what agile is not. Many things get called agile, especially by people who are trying to say something. If you ask the makers of agile products, they will tell you that to be agile, you need to all user stories and the sticky note cards. They just happen to say. As a result,
Letizia, you have to put closer the mic, your microphone to the, I think, to the speakers, so that everybody can hear.
Is it better now? No?
Yeah, we can hear you, but if you put your microphone that is on your headset close to the computer's speakers, then it could be audible. Otherwise, it doesn't. You cannot hear. No, it's not improving. Yeah, I don't think it's possible to listen to this now.
Okay, so people will look at the video later.
Yeah.
Later, and we go ahead. I thought we had tested this, but probably we made it. Sorry, yeah. I apologize for that. So we go ahead. It's not so crucial. And then you can take the screen now, Orges.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'll just share from my side. It's easier to switch between slides, I guess. Okay, so thank you, Letizia, for giving a very good overview of the research part of this presentation. Well, what I want to go through a little bit more is about the context on how Agile is visualized in the practice community. So what the Agile Manifesto presented almost a decade ago was that we are trying to uncover better ways in developing software. And in this way, most probably, it is helping also others to do better development. And in comparison to what we talked about, the waterfall model and the classical models, there are some distinguished characteristics that we might want to go through. Like we have to bring more value to individuals, for instance, and their interactions in the project over processes and tools, which are very valued in the waterfall model. Furthermore, if you want to have a proper software working and delivered, then you should focus on that rather than do comprehensive documentation. At times, from the if people had worked before on software development, the main characteristic was that you'd write a lot of diagrams and you try to present them to the customer. But what the customer wants to look at is the working version of the software rather than comprehensive documentation that tell him how the software is being constructed. And of course, the focus is more on collaboration. I'll make practical examples of this. From my experience, a lot of developers shy out going to the customer and talking to him. But this happens also in teams sometimes, in the team that I am also part of or I am supervising. There is a bit of shyness to go to the customer and to ask questions very often. You don't have a contract. It's not like waterfall. In waterfall, you have to negotiate a contract. Then it's more rigid. Then you have to make more discussions before going into new requirements. And this is a very good characteristic of Agile, where you do actually have the flexibility. And responding to change. Like I said, in Agile, you can always change. This is something that is brought up also at the very beginning. Most probably you can change also at the very end of the project. You can ask for a new feature. And that should be possible. You shouldn't say no. You should always welcome change. Agile is about adapting towards new changes instead of following a plan that has been predefined from the beginning, and then you have to stick to that plan. So you don't have those kind of boards that say, okay, is this project deviating from what we expect or not? Like it is said also in the Agile Manifesto, from a practitioner's perspective as well, it's not that the items that are on the right side, like in the red quadrant, are bad. They still have very good value. However, in Agile context, we try to value more the items that are on the left side. And what this brings, it's the value towards the Agile development in the perspective of developing software today. There are mainly 12, I call them Gondel principles because these are principles that drive Agile. And of course, these are derived from the Agile Manifesto, and they bring value to the end users and also to the development teams. So the first one, I'll just go briefly. The first one is about customer satisfaction. Keep in mind that the end product that you deliver will be the product that the customer's values, and he'll be satisfied towards the interaction that he has with the team. So it's very crucial that you orient yourself towards communicating with the customer and never shy out in asking questions and bringing new features into your development cycle. And you are always prone to making changes. If you don't welcome changes as a team, then you are not Agile. Agile is about changing, and being preoccupied when changes are not there. So when somebody doesn't ask you for a change, then you have to tease the customer. You have to ask for more. And there are time boxes. Frequent delivery is important and crucial. You have to deliver in sprints because you don't want to push the time window more than a couple of weeks or a month. This way you can also mitigate risk in your project. Teams should be all the development team or whatever teams that are working together, business teams, they should always sit in the same rooms because they can collaborate better. They can work better, and they can also bring more value to the end product. And you should be motivated. If you are not motivated as a team, most probably you will not deliver an end product that it has the value that you expect, and also the value that the customer expects from you. And this is also, I've seen this also in a large Agile context in US. I saw a lot of people mentioning that you don't send an email to ask for an issue or is there something going wrong. You have to do face-to-face conversation. You have to go to the next developer and ask about that issue, or you can do stand-up meetings where you clarify. You can do daily scrums where you clarify the dependencies or the issues you have along the way. Working software, this is the main coin. I see a lot of development, but it has to work. And the working software is what you are getting paid for actually in Agile. So it's very crucial that you deliver working software at every iteration. And this is comes together with the concept of done that we'll discuss very soon. And you should keep pace, like you shouldn't overdo it. You should have all the team, the customer and you. I'll make another example. For instance, if the customer is not making too much effort in your team, or he doesn't have much time, then he is not keeping the pace with your team. So you'll have problems. You'll be stopped a little bit along the way. So Agile is all about cost and pace, from the development team, from the users, from the product owners, or whoever is involved in the product development. And you should pay continuous attention to software best practices. It is crucial. Technical debt, it's well acknowledged today. We understand how the technical debt works, and we want to know that you are using the best practices. Because if you are not, then most probably you'll end up in situations that are not very pleasant at the end of the sprint or at the end of the actual delivery of the final product. And you should keep it simple. You should construct those burn down diagrams, for instance, like in Scrum, and you should estimate the work that is being done and not done, and you should try to evaluate as fast as possible. And your team is self-organized. Don't expect other people outside of the team to tell you what to do. Not even a project manager, another project manager, or a director, or whatever, or even the customer. You have to be self-organized. You make your own decisions. So that nothing that you mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, it makes a lot of room for doing a lot of things, because you have opportunities. If the customer doesn't ask for anything from you, then you are the team that makes decisions. And at the end of every cycle, you have to do regular reflections. Like you have a sprint, you do reflections. For what? For what purpose? To improve yourselves. Taking the example from Agile and from Waterfall. In Waterfall, you only make those learning curves at the end of the project. And it's very difficult to have learning curves after 1 year that you have been developing. While in Agile, you do 2-week sprint, then you go and reflect. How did the team work? What can we improve? What are the things that we should do better in the future, in the next sprint, for instance? So,
Orges, wait a moment. I have a question for you
sure.
and for all the students that I don't want an answer now, but I would like you to reflect about, and also a small story, because I know that I know little, but I have done something good. I think that when I came back to customer-driven project after many years that I have been teaching other things and doing other projects, in 2017 I come back to customer-driven projects, and I find out that the documentation is required is 150 pages. And then I started one of my battles against the other professor. Say, this is not possible. We cannot in the year 2017 require 200 pages of documentation. And so I made this battle to get the documentation down to 50 pages. But nobody has told me, and I don't want an answer now, but I would like the students to reflect about this and tell me a feedback during the semester and at the end of the semester. Is this limit of 50 pages good? Or is it because when I said 50, it was not that this was supported by research. I talked to somebody in industry and say, oh, what do you do, blah, blah, blah. And then I decided to go down from 200 to 50, but I don't know if 50 is the right constraint to impose. I don't know how well it fits with the principles of Agile. And again, I would like the groups to think and to be critical to the constraint that we impose to the project, and also on our compendium. That it's I rewrote again the compendium in 2017. It was my attempt to make the project Agile, but it's something that I want to play back to the group and hear their opinion. You said that you should work face-to-face. How do you recommend we do this when we are students with complicated schedules and a guaranteed room only once a week?
Good point.
It's a good point, but in this day that you should try to find the best, make the best out of the schedules. We also people in industry they don't work on a single project.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, August. They also have many, and we also at university, we have many projects, and we have to use our calendars and schedule time together to work together.
Yeah, you have to context switch between projects and tasks usually, and it's pretty common that working face to face. It's good that the course has at least one day, full day, during the week, or 2 days during the week, that you can work all together as a team. And it doesn't matter if you are sometimes with this days, it doesn't matter even if you are sitting together, you can still use technology well to come face to face, like we are doing this lecture now, and also other people are doing business in general. So face to face conversation is important. Even if you don't meet, you meet online and you ask simple questions. I've been doing outsourcing a lot, and whenever a developer came to me, I was the project manager. He asked a question and I didn't know the answer. I called up the customer and I said, "Can I ask you for 5 minutes?" And then it goes like that. You have to communicate immediately instead of sending long emails. And so even though you are not doing this daily basis, you can context switch between the different tasks you have, and you can still focus on those days. And maybe use some day of the week, like 5 minutes during the week, and ask for a question to the customer. This is my suggestion.
And thank you very much, Andy, for the question. We are very happy when you ask your question, because again, this lecture should be not like the theoretical lecture about Agile. It should be something that helps you to overcome the challenges that you have in your project, and to have a better process, to have a better report. So we are very, very thankful that you ask questions like this that are very, very relevant. So thank you, Andy. August, the floor is yours.
Thanks. I don't see the chat, by the way. So yeah, thank you.
But I can monitor the chat and
thanks.
Yes.
So what are the differences? I think you made very good points at the very beginning. We know that the traditional waterfall is predictive. You decide everything at the beginning, even if you don't know much at the very beginning about the software. And then you stick to that plan. So that's problematic, while Agile adapts along the way. You don't know everything at the beginning, but you can still iterate next sprint. But it's important also to deliver working software earlier, so the customer can see and give feedback. Also, you have to, in traditional waterfall, you had to go one time through each stage. Like you build the requirements, you go and build the architecture, design, then you code it and test it. So basically and deploy it at the end. So basically you did each stage once. While here, you repeat those 5 stages or more stages several times. You have to go through requirements, you have to design maybe the provide the architecture or design, and then code and test, and then do this again in the next sprint. So Agile is all about those iterations and rewinds back and forth. But it's important that you do this at a smaller scale with respect to what was done in the waterfall. And then documentation and deliverables were one strong point in waterfall. So Letizia, when you bring up these 200 pages, if you ask me, when I presented the UML diagrams, the old UML, the use cases and those model diagrams from whatever the classes and so on, the customers didn't care much. They were looking at the software. Is it working well? So it's very nice to see a chunk of product MVP, a very minimal viable product that works at the end of the course. And that's very interesting. And there is a code that works and runs. So it's good it's scaled from 200 to 50 pages. So students can put more effort into making the software more feasible and runnable and executable, rather than having to write a lot of text. You have to make big design up front in waterfall that you should know of, and then in the Agile you design and you improve. So even if with my group, I remember they decided on some design at the beginning, but then they had to build the software in Django framework, so they knew they had to do model view controller, so they were good at improving their design anyways in the architectural point of view. Interaction with users during requirements and user testing. So this is very later stage in waterfall. So basically you interact in Agile very early on, while in waterfall you used to interact at the beginning when you had to establish the requirements, then you develop everything, and then you go to the customer, here is your product. But then if he wants to make a change or improve or come up with something new, then it is not possible. While in Agile, you do focus on interactions, very frequent interactions. So this is also a point that you brought up in the Mentimeter. And focus on meeting project requirement specifications. Like I said, this is mainly in traditional waterfall, while here you focus on the needs in Agile. So in Agile, you ask always the customer, what do you need? What do you expect from this feature? So then you build that user story that fulfills the customer expectations. And you have structure functional teams that are a bit also misaligned. Like I see this also in my group. There is a, let's say, backend team and there is the front-end team, but in Agile, you usually have just cross-functional. You are self-organized, you are, for instance, you do everything as a team. So you don't need to create those sub-teams. You just have to work as a team and you have to do things together. So you don't have the testing team or the I don't know, the quality assurance team and so on. So you don't have all this kind of teams integrated in Agile. While in Auto Waterfall, everything was divided. Everything was represented by a different team. So it is not very practical approach. So while we did some differences, there are also several options in Agile methodologies and frameworks. And this context is very important and crucial for you to understand, because in many cases, what happens is that we present some methodology and then we combine it with others, but then it's also about how we adapt that methodology, the rigor of adapting the methodology itself. So we have practice-centric methodologies like XP, which might include test-driven development or agile modeling, but you also have a workflow-centric like Scrum, Kanban, that you focus more on the people rather on the practice that you are using. And of course, you might have other options like specification-centric, feature-driven development, or the entire cycle-driven development, like dynamic system development or agile unified processes that include the whole entire life cycle, if you wish. We are going to present, we deemed 3 of them quite crucial because at least when reading and analyzing the proposals from the customers, we could at least identify these 3 crucial practices, and we decided to go through them because we thought the customers will bring them up anyways at some point, or might be interested in those practices. So when it comes to Scrum framework, I'll make some also examples here. The Scrum framework is very simple framework, lightweight framework that brings you the opportunity to develop and sustain very complex products. Why I say this? It's important to understand that you don't have a framework with a lot of requirements. You have a framework that tells you immediately what to do and to implement that. So you have to focus more on development rather than an interaction between individuals in the team, rather than go and discuss a lot about requirements and documentation and so on. It is simple to understand, but at points it's also difficult to master. One of my frustrations when I started using the Scrum methodology in my very first job was that, okay, you have to input those hours. And I think this is a frustration that comes also from other developers. You have to take track, for instance, how much work you are doing and so on. But let's not discuss about that now. Let's look at the main pillars that Scrum is proposing. First is transparency. And what transparency means is that you have to give the developers the whole picture. You have to provide them the whole information that they need in order to develop the software well. If the customer is missing information, you go and ask him. It's very important. And the Scrum Master, for instance, should facilitate the impediments that the developers have. Along the way, you should also do inspection. If something is wrong or something is not working well, then you should inspect it. And you should do frequent inspection. You will go through verification and validation soon. But what this means is that you should check your software early on. And furthermore, you have to adapt to changes. This is something that you brought on. And it's important that the adaptation works every time that you are asked about a new feature, for instance, or a new development scope. And Agile is a mindset. And also Scrum, applying Scrum, it's part of those mindsets. Like you have to be committed, you have to have courage, not shy out of anything you need to phase. There is nothing impossible in software. That's what we say, at least when we try new projects. You have to keep focused and you have to be open with the next people that you are working and the rest of the team. And you have to be respectful. There is no senior developer, junior developer, or whatever. You should all consider yourselves the same, and you should work together whenever there are issues and contexts that you should improve in the software development process. When we look at the Scrum framework, as I said, it's a lightweight framework. I noticed, and I was quite happy that at least in my team, most of the people knew about this Scrum framework and they were acquainted with. It starts with a product backlog. The product backlog builds up based on the information that you get from the customer. It's basically a list where you get all the initial features and all the initial requirements that you want to build the software. So from that, you can start, since the product backlog can grow quite a lot, you can start then dividing. So it's a divide and conquer approach. You divide it in smaller pieces. You take the most relevant and the most important or prioritized features from the product backlog, and you start planning how to execute those or how to develop those features. So basically you start a sprint planning, which moves on toward building a sprint backlog. And the sprint backlog itself, it's a very seldom part of the product backlog. Like for instance, if product backlog has 100 tasks, then you have to take out of those 100, you can take the first 10 because you think in 2 weeks you can complete 10 features of your software. And then you start iterating, like you can imagine. The Scrum team has to do daily Scrums and until the entire process of the sprint is finished. And eventually at the end of the sprint, you have to do the sprint review and then do the sprint retrospective. The sprint review goes more into discussion with the customer. I didn't participate with my team on this sprint review. However, I was a bit surprised that the customer was maybe not there when the sprint review happened. But please involve your customer when the sprint review happens, because it's important to get feedback and to get more context. I'll come back to this.
Question. Yeah. This year I don't supervise any groups, but in the past I have acted as supervisor, and for some reason all the sprints are 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So all the groups I have supervised, the sprint is 2 weeks. Yeah. Why? Is it because students inspire themselves from the old reports, or it is? Yeah.
That's it's a very good question, actually. You don't plan it like you don't copy for planning. There is a thumb rule that we'll discuss also in the events. There is a time box that you say, okay, the sprint shouldn't be more than 30 days, or the sprint shouldn't last more than 1 month in order to keep risks out of the project or out of the sprint. So things don't change so much during those 30 days. However, when you start a sprint, you just pick up the tasks from the product backlog, and then you start making estimations. And those estimations tell you eventually how long your sprint will be. It is a good idea to have fixed size sprints, like 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, because it helps people to organize well and to book meetings, etc. But you have to estimate from the tasks that you have at hand. So if those 10 tasks that I mentioned, each task takes, for instance, 10 hours, then you need 100 hours. Can you complete 100 hours in 2 weeks? Maybe not. You need 2.5 weeks. So maybe you need, instead of saying 2 week sprint, it's going to be 3 week sprint. Okay, so making my point here is not a fixed size. You shouldn't bring up based on 2 weeks because the other students did like that, but you should do the sprint based on the estimations for each task that you have at hand. Don't exaggerate it. Don't make sprints more than 1 month, but it's okay to make sprints of 2 weeks, of 3 weeks, of 4 weeks, but don't do sprints of 8 weeks or 3 months. This is the bottom line. So I'm not sure why all the students are doing 2 week sprints. This is a good question. My impression is that some products, if they are easy, they can finish in 2 weeks, but if they are complex, they can finish in more than 2 weeks.
I have students are writing very, very good answers in the chat, and I have a question that I want to read for you, Orges.
Sure.
Is Niklas asked, can you do sprint demo and sprint review in the same meeting?
Sprint demonstration?
Yes.
And sprint review?
Review.
Yeah. Commonly, you do the review. You keep the review like in 2 hours, and you can include the demonstration of. You don't have to demonstrate the sprint. You have to demonstrate the product, but you can demonstrate what you have accomplished in that sprint and if your goal has been achieved. And in the sprint review, you have to keep it very planned and focused. Like you can do that if you have time. For instance, if you have a 2-week sprint, you do a sprint review of 1 hour or 2 hours. And if you have time, you have to structure it very well to tell everybody, okay, these are the features we have developed. Ask the customer if those features are working for him or her, and then get the feedback. And eventually, if the feedback is good or has opportunities for improvement, you have to push that for the next sprint. So you can do demos, but I would say it's a good idea to do demonstration in the sprint review.
Orges, another question. We have a student called Olav. He asked the same question as me in his words. He says, is it okay for sprint size to vary for each sprint depending on user story? It was the same that I wanted to ask. If you have a user story that is very difficult, you can tell.
Yeah, very easy answer to this. I haven't put the Scrum burn down diagram here, but very easy answer. If you have planned at the beginning, like for 2 sprints of 2 weeks, 4 weeks in total, and your team is so good that you do almost accomplish the task, every task in the first sprint, and then you planned a little bit more, but you finish in 3 weeks instead of 4 weeks. So maybe your planning was not that good. You have to reflect on this. And also, it's very important to state, okay, what do I do if I'm working better than I expected? Should I just keep the sprint and call up the customer after the second 2 weeks, after 1 month, or can I call him up and do the sprint review a little bit earlier? Of course, you do it earlier. However, you don't have to plan, as I said, based on calendar time. You have to plan on person hours. It's important to understand you are a team of 7 or 9 people. You can have a capacity of, let's say, of 9 by 8. So you can go around 60 hours, a capacity of 60 hours, and then capacity of 60 hours, you should probably finish one of the sprints. But as I said, it's not fixed. You can vary the sprints. It's a good idea to keep it fixed because it helps people understand where are these meetings. You put them on calendar, you make invitations like these ones that we have for the lectures, and then nobody is confused. However, you can vary and you can adapt based on the needs of the product you are developing. So don't be static. I would suggest not to be static, personally.
Thank you, Orges. Thank you very much. There are no more questions as far as I can see. And also, if you have, okay, no, we have another question. Are we doing a halfway break? No, we are not. I asked in the chat before if it is okay for you. We will not do a break, and we try to finish 5:45. But if you really want a break, so we will do a break. Yes, so we go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go very fast on this because I feel a lot of students are acquainted. You have the Scrum team, and we said everything here, but you should know 3 key roles: product owner, development team, and Scrum Master. It's important to divide these roles well and to understand how they work. Like, for instance, the product owner should be managing the backlog, should be understanding all the items there, and should explain them to the development team. While the development team has to understand when a product or a certain task is done. For instance, if you tested some feature or you developed and tested, then it's done. Or if you wrote a documentation part for that feature, if you need to write a documentation or manual, then it is done. So you improve and increment this. So I'll come back to this soon. And then you shouldn't have sub-teams. No titles, no sub-teams. You are self-organized, of course, but you should always keep in consideration that everybody is the same. So I'm not very happy when I hear that, okay, our team is divided in 2 parts. It shouldn't be like that. I'll come back also for reasons like, apart from Scrum, there is also XP and explains this even better. And the team size is like the one, this is the manual stated, like you can be 9 people, but at least you should be 3 people. So it's important to have like share 2 pizzas, but what's important is you should have 3 people at least to start doing Agile or Scrum based methodology. And the Scrum Master, the last one, I would say just one important word, he should be a facilitator. like this servant leader. The servant leader brings up what are the issues, and he has the mindset towards pulling the team forward instead of telling the team what to do. So it's not a boss mindset, it's a mindset that you might imagine that this person has to work with the team, has to collaborate, and has to facilitate and help the team move forward. And he should also facilitate all the events that we'll discuss in a moment about the sprints and the Scrum in general. So what kind of events you are expecting? I know that all of you imagine that you have a sprint planning event where you plan everything, maybe at the beginning of the sprint, and then you have to do the execution with daily scrums, and then you have to review and do retrospective. When you review, you can do those demonstrations that you wanted, but what's important here is that you go through the whole events and you understand that these events are time boxed, have some fixed timing that you have to use for them. So I don't think we can play this video.
No,
but,
we also it's better students can see it later on.
So it's on the presentation anyways. So when it is done, you have to ask this: is it done? Is it done? Or is it finished? A certain task. You have an agreed upon shared understanding on this. Like my team is doing test-driven development. So what does it mean for them to be done for a task? It mainly means that they have completed the development and the test has passed. But this can also improve. Like you can say, okay, we did the test, it passed, and everything is okay, it's running well. However, we can do some performance checking next time. So the concept of done evolves. It's a concept of stating that I have finished the task, but also it's a concept of telling that I finished the task because the test case has passed, or we run this performance testing and everything went well in the system and so on. And you have those daily meetings that you know about. This is 15 minutes. I hope everybody is doing this 15 minutes if you are doing Scrum-based methodology. These are 15 minutes that you don't have to do them every day. You have to do it at least the days that you meet. And what you do here is first you tell what you have accomplished yesterday, but not personal things about the project, keep it focused, and then what you are going to do today and what can be stopping you. When you bring up issues that can be stopping you, then the Scrum Master has this facilitation role where he tells you, okay, this is how we can solve this problem. I have maybe a question for the students, but you can answer this later. The question is simple. If you see the picture there, you see a board that we will discuss as well. But what do you think? Can we move from a task, from a process of being done to undone, or to do again? So you think about that. Even though you have finished the task, you have moved it to some status that is done, but then you discuss it in the daily Scrum and there's some issue come up. Do you think you can put it back, further back, and then do it again and so on? So this is something we can bring up later if you wish. Or you can just write some comments. So can we move back the tasks from done to do again? Sprint review and sprint retrospective. It is good that you made a question about this. You can inspect the increments in the sprint review, what you have performed and what you have achieved. You can adapt to the product backlog, and you can, of course, end that sprint and go and move on to the next sprint if you wish. And you have to demonstrate that things are done, and you have to receive feedbacks. So when you receive every feedback from the different stakeholders, including yourselves, then you can move forward with the next sprint and you can finish the sprint review. So it lasts 4 hours here, it says, for 1 month sprint. It is a hard meeting. I've been in these meetings. I had meetings 2 hours, but it's still, you have to keep focused because you have to demonstrate the features and then you have to also get feedback and you have to take notes. The sprint retrospective, I mentioned this before. I will just go very briefly. After the sprint review, you have to improve yourself as a team. So you have to analyze to say, okay, this is what went well. This is what was wrong with our team. So this is how we can improve ourselves next. So you should try to improve yourselves and you can adapt to the new changes and do better in the next sprint and also define what are the next goals.
Orges, before we leave Scrum, I have to read a question from one student. She says, are we still, the student is called Mattea, she asked, are we still using Scrum if we have dedicated responsibilities?
Dedicated responsibilities for what? For the tasks that you are developing?
Yeah, like for example, somebody is, Mattea can take the voice if she likes, but as I understand, if I am responsible for the architecture and you are responsible for writing the code, can we say that we are using Scrum, or do we have to do everything in a flexible way?
Now, you don't have to do everything. The team has to work together. However, you have to divide the tasks, but you shouldn't call yourself like, I am the architecture specialist. You are part of the team, you are the development team, and then you can still do Scrum. Scrum is basically based on the concepts that you can do, participate in a team, and then you can do development of a certain project in an agile way. So of course you can have different roles at some level, but those roles shouldn't be rigid. You can switch from one role to the other. You can do the architecture today, but you can do the coding tomorrow. So it doesn't really matter if you have those. So even though you have spread out responsibilities, those responsibilities can change. This is my bottom line.
Okay, I hope Mattea gets a good answer. If not, don't hesitate to send an email to us. We will. We like to get. Okay, she said yes. We have another question that is very good, and it's something that also I have in my mind. This: how do we educate? So Vebjorn asked, is the product owner from the customer company? And if so, what if they are not familiar with the responsibilities of this role?
Okay, that's a good question.
Because it's the same impression that I have, that if the company is not, doesn't know about the role of in the Agile, what do we do?
Yeah, well, the way I see it in the group that I have is that the product owner, I think it's part of the team. So you can define the product owner even being part of your team. And actually, it can be part of your team as product owner. Usually that's very common. It doesn't have to be from the company or from the customer. But the role of the product owner is very important because he has to be one person, like you know, and then this person has to work a lot with the customer to get feedback about requirements. So the product owner takes care of the backlog. So what does it mean to take care of the backlog? To understand, okay, this feature is built in this way. That's why I said at the beginning, if you are one representative, you are the product owner, you ask the customer 5 minutes. If you don't understand the feature, you call him or you send him a text and you say, okay, I don't understand this feature. What does it mean? And then he comes up with more explanation. And then you update this in the backlog. And in this way, you keep updated the backlog and you help the development team do more things. And you don't have to explain this role to the customer because sometimes the customers, are not even software engineers. They don't have to be software engineers. Like my team, NTNU Sports, one of the customers is not even a software engineer. So he doesn't understand quite a lot or anything about this Scrum methodology or whatever. So please be independent team, self-organize, and if you don't have a product owner from the customer, you build this role within the team.
So now we have 2 questions. If we don't finish, it's no crisis because we can use a bit of time next week. We don't need so much time for the technical writing. So it's our goal is not to finish. Our goal is to have as much interaction as possible. So we have a question that say from Magnus. Should tasks related to the report be included in the sprint backlog, since they also require time and reuse capacity for? And here I can answer from my experience as a supervisor before. I think that these tasks should be included because everything that requires hours should be included, and you burn, as Orges explained very well, you burn hours.
Yeah.
So correct me, Orges, if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think so. At the end of the entire project that you have run, I usually have those Kanban charts or burned down charts, and I can see them and analyze and say, okay, this is what happened in this project. We had this task done well, and this had some issues, so maybe we improved for the next project. So it's good to have everything there. When you write a report, it's even better. Since you have 50 pages, then you can say, okay, I delivered this report today, but after 2 months, if you restart a similar project, then you can go back to that report and read those backlog items and understand, okay, this might be an issue. And remember, every project you do is also an oracle. An oracle means that you can predict for the next project. Like if you have a similar task, you can say, okay, how much time did I spend on this task in the previous project? 5 hours. Okay, then it's going to be 5 hours again, or maybe a bit less because I'm getting better at it. So I think it's a good idea to keep track of this in the report, to be honest.
Yes, so you can go ahead. I answer one question online. I hope the student will be happy with my answer. Otherwise, he can ask again. So we go to extreme programming.
Yeah, so in extreme programming or XP, this is more centric towards the tools and what we are using, the practice-centered approach. So you have software development discipline that organizes people to produce higher quality software. So what you expect in XP is to check the quality very, very often, but it's very similar to Scrum actually, because it goes like, you have to plan, you have to iterate, and then you have to do testing in order to get some acceptance from the end user. So it's basically the same approach. And then you have those spikes and changes in certain situations. So if you have uncertain situations, then something changes a lot. So again, we are oriented towards simplicity, communication, and then feedback, and of course, courage and respect. So these are all the mindset part of the Agile. And again, if we look at XP approaches in general, I see a mix sometimes. I also see a mix of how people develop things. They take a certain practice, like for instance from Scrum, and then combine it with XP, and then something is, you have to stick to some approach or to some framework at some level, even though there might be welcome some changes, or you might welcome some different framework approaches in other different contexts. But be careful in adopting the framework you are using well. What this means is, like for instance, if you have XP practices, you are doing pair programming. And maybe if you are doing pair programming, does it have to be done also in Scrum practices? So you have to think about this. What else? This is more about feedback process. So in pair programming, what you do is one person codes, the other one reviews. How does this differ from code reviews? It differs because it's real time. So in this case, you have to inspect and check immediately, while in other code reviews, you have to review later. So it's a waste of time, actually. Then planning game is like releasing and iterating together. So it's important, like I said, I remember one first project, I just released something immediately. I just iterated and released. And the customer took the iPad, tried it out, pushed some buttons and says, oh, okay, some things are not working. Okay, you have to understand this is the very first version. So we plan to release earlier because we wanted your feedback. How does it look? And then it improved, of course, in the next iteration. Then you can do test-driven development. I'll come back to this a bit later, but you can write test cases earlier first, and then you can write the code. Is it very hard? Actually not. If you know the specification requirements, the inputs and outputs to your system, then you can, of course, write those tests earlier. Like, for instance, you know that the outcome is the sum between two numbers, it's going to be a certain number, so you just test, okay, 2 plus 2 will be 4, so you just write the test case. Assertion 2 plus 2 equal to 4, and then you write the code that does this job. And then you have to, of course, you have to sit together as a whole team. So you are generalized specialists. This goes back to what I was discussing earlier. If you work in a team in Agile, you usually want to have all those responsibilities that you are capable of. So it's not like front-end, back-end developer. It's more like full-stack developer. So you should know how to, of course, do front-end development, and you should know also how to do back-end development. However, you can be in a certain process of the development, like you are designing or implementing the interface at some point, and then you are switching to do some coding for an API or whatever. And then you have a continuous process practice, like you have continuous integration. You check the code, you know a lot, you have heard a lot about continuous integration today. I'm pretty sure about that because everybody is talking about that. But it's also important to know that you can check, integrate, and test immediately. So this is a feature that you want to implement in your project. And I was so happy when my team had to do this with the customer, at least. Refactoring, it's about improving the design of the code. It's important that you do refactoring, and we'll come back to this process. But every time I had to write a project, then I had to refactor at some level, in the middle of the project usually. And small releases, so frequent releases, it's important again to get feedback earlier, like we said. And again, programmer welfare. Programmers today, I don't know what happens in the future if AI overcomes programming, but programmers today, they are people. They don't need to work long hours. If they overdo it, like for 2 weeks, they work long hours, then most probably they will crash. So there is no interest in neither in the project manager nor in the development team to work more than they are supposed to. They can do it. The thumb rule here is from textbook is that you work 2 weeks long hours, but then you have to go back to the certain pace, like 40 hours per week, not more than that. And you should have a shared understanding of the code. I know this is hard because you have different responsibilities, you are students, but you should understand that the code written by one programmer should be understood by the other programmers as well, or developers. And coding standards, you have to minimize issues or approaches, and you should use those best practices, like I said before. And when it comes to design, you can design the way that you prefer, like this model view controller or whatever, MVP, or whatever design comes to your mind for, or architecture comes to your mind as a team. That is the best that works. So don't stress if the design is not the one that you are expecting. You should choose the design and the implementation of the software. And of course, you should have a shared understanding of the team, like how the team and the system will work. So it's not like I'm doing only the front end, so I don't know what the back end does or whatever, but it's also about look at the bigger picture. What is this system doing? How it is beneficial? Okay, so look at those aspects as well. The roles are pretty similar. I know it's pretty theoretical, but again, you have the coach, which is the Scrum Master. Again, it's not a leader in the sense that he tells you what to do, but he helps you how to do it. And you have the customer, which is the sort of a product owner here, because he's a business representative. He tells what to do and what to update the backlog and so on, or to update the features that you are going to develop and so on. And of course, the developers and testers. These are a bit separate here because XP is more oriented toward getting high quality software done fast and well. So the testing phase is pretty important. I don't know, are there any questions here, Letizia? I'm not sure.
No, we can go ahead.
One thing we said at the very beginning, what is lean and how does lean approach to any concepts? So lean is an overall mindset. And of course, it's a mindset coming from industry and adapted to software development, but it's not a practice. It's not like a framework or whatever you want to define it. And this mindset actually helps you in deriving better software with avoiding a lot of waste. So you have to avoid those waste factors that you get, usually wasting time or wasting resources or wasting people working on a certain task and so on. So lean is all about doing things better. So this is the mindset of lean. And of course, it focuses on value rather than focus on documentation or extra work to do for the development team in general. What are the concepts? First is eliminate waste, like I said, maximize value and minimize what is wasted time or wasted value in your project. And of course, amplify the learning, that you facilitate communication and feedback. The better the learning curve, the better is the approach that you have for the development. You decide late, which means that you differ decisions that you don't know about. If you don't know something, it's not the end of the world. It's no problem for your project, but you don't make decisions now. You leave it for later. And you deliver as fast as possible. We have this principle that if you use Lean and Kanban, you have a continuous flow of delivery. And I like that because it's like you go forward with everything. And you empower the team. You tell the team, okay, you know how to do this. You tell the developer, this is the way you should do it. So you should do your work. You have to provide some knowledge, but of course you have to respect, because whenever the team is built, sometimes junior developers come to your team, and you have to say, okay, maybe if he doesn't know something, it's not a problem. You have to empower him, and you'll see that after 2 weeks he will be as good as you or even better. And you have to build integrity, which means that you have to be testing throughout your project, and not at the very end, like in the waterfall process that you had to test at the very end. And of course, see and be aware of the whole parts of your implementation and your project. So what are examples of waste in software? Maybe this was a better question to put on Mentimeter. What is waste? But in Lean, it's like, is the code completed but not tested, for instance? I hear this a lot when I was working with a lot of programmers. They say, oh, I've finished this task. Good, but can we test it? And then when we tested it, it didn't work. Then it's wasted code. And you have extra processes, like you have to sign for a document, or even waiting for requirement sign-offs or whatever. You have to avoid this, and Agile does this very well. And if there are bugs in the code and or even specification misunderstanding, then it's also wasted time and wasted features. If you build more features, like feature creep or requirements creep, and you build more features that are needed, it's also waste. So build the necessary feature that the customer tells you about. And also motion, like motion here is not motion of objects, because this is coming from Toyota industry. So it's more about poor communication. So I used to work with different teams sometimes, but I noticed that, okay, there are some people that have miscommunication gap. Then it's a big problem, because the project might fail at times in those situations. And of course, bugs in the code, like I said before. Since you don't have maybe also questions about Lean, and I'm just moving forward with and hoping to get more insights about previous year's projects, the Kanban process is also one of the strategies you may use in Agile. And it goes very well with Lean methodology as well. So it's a method of visualizing the workflow. So how well the work goes, and how focused is the work that you are doing. Are you keeping the pace, and are you delivering regularly? So it's very important to deliver frequently and with good pace. I'll tell you a bit how this differs a little bit with Scrum. But it's good. My team has a Trello board, and they can move tasks around. And I made a question earlier, if this task can move from one stage to another. I don't know if you want to type in and say your opinion, that would be good. But the Kanban board, it mainly looks like this. It might have even fewer columns. Like you can have a pending task or a task to do, then you can start analyzing, and here you have some sub information like doing and done, but it's analyzed already. And then you have development, or being developed as a part of your task, and then you test it. And then whenever it is tested, you pull it when it is availability or capacity to the customer, which means that if the customer can check this feature, for instance, then you can tell him, okay, look at this. But if he is busy and he doesn't have time, then most probably what happens is that you are not, even if you tell him, okay, I've sent you this feature last week, have you seen it? And he says no, then it's a problem, because he doesn't have capacity. And then this becomes a problem. Yes,
yes, there is a comment from Niklas. He says, you can always add the new thing you want to implement as a new feature or bug, and move that from open to in progress. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is this a question, or was it a statement?
It's a comment to when you say you can move tasks from here and there. Then there is a okay. Yes. There is another one that I don't. Yes. Okay, we go ahead.
Yeah, my point here is that even if something is tested and you have deployed it, and something else went wrong, you can pull it back. But even during development, if you say it's done and you test it and it's wrong, then again you have to put it back to maybe pending. And when it goes back to pending, it's a scheduling algorithm. It might go at the end of the list. And also here you have to consider priorities. I don't have so much time, but the priorities here is from top to bottom, which means that the tasks that are in the higher hand are prioritized and start first, while those in the bottom start later. But also another concept is the concept of work in progress, or the capacity that you have. Here are some numbers: 6, 3, 5, 3, 5. So what does this mean? That you can have so many tasks here as the number says. Like you can have 6 tasks in pending, 3 tasks in analysis, 5 in development, 3 in testing, and 1 in deployment. Well, in deployment means that maybe the customer can check it, or you push it to a server or whatever. But then you can imagine, if you look at the figure below, you can imagine where is some bottleneck. The bottleneck is the throughput. It's less than you expect, which means that if you are good at analyzing as a team and developing as well, and you have 10 items in per week in analysis and development, but then you can test only 5, then you can deliver only 5 maybe to the customer. So you have bottlenecks, and you should avoid those bottlenecks and not to create some flow congestion in general in the development process. And of course, there is some differences here. I won't stop much, but Kanban is about continuous flow. Well, you want to deliver, as I said before, I deliver tasks as soon as feature as soon as I had it in my hands and done to the customer. I wasn't shying out, and this was very good because he commented very fast. While you are doing mainly iterations. So this is also a good question, like you said before, Letizia. Is it 2 weeks? No, it doesn't have to be 2 weeks, because if you are doing agile in general, you have fixed iterations. After 2 weeks, you present to the customer. While in Kanban, as soon as you finish a task, you send it over to the customer, and it's okay. And again, the metric is cycle time. So cycle time is more like you start from requirement, doing analysis and development and testing, and then deployment. So this is the cycle of a task. When this cycle is finished, send it to the customer. I don't know if this has been done before in the course, but I think it's quite an interesting approach. If you could have something like you send every feature that you have in your user stories every 2 days or once a week. So you don't wait for that sprint to do the demo day or whatever to do the review. And then you have release methodology, continuous methodology, and of course you release whenever at discretion of the team or at the end of the sprint, like I said. And finally, we have some concepts about testing. Maybe I should have put this as a question, but I feel most of the people know about this. What is validation and verification? But there is also misconceptions. So when we talk, I'll start from verification. When we talk about verification, is the act of reviewing, inspecting, testing that everything works, established based on the agreement that you had with the customer or based on a user story that you have defined. However, bringing value to your project is not just about saying that the test has passed. It's also about the fact that, is this the system that the customer is expecting? And here comes the concept of validation, the assurance that the product or service, or even the system, meets the needs of the customer. So one is conformance to requirement, the other reflects more to the fitness of use. But what's important here is that, are you building the right system? And if yes, even though it works perfectly, if it's not the right system, then you might have to throw it away. So it's a very crucial and important concept that you be aware of. And where can you check this? You can check this in different instances. Like you can check this in different phases of Scrum, for instance, or software value stream. But you can do tests everywhere, almost everywhere. You can do user testing, you can do acceptance testing, you can do all those kind of tests that you think of, since from the starting of the project until the end of the project. Now, one of the major testing approaches today and practices today is the continuous integration. And why is it a good process, and why is it bringing more value? Because it is based on the fact that whenever you do a change, you have this change available as soon as possible to the end user. So it starts mainly like, maintaining the code, then you start making automated builds, and then you test those builds, and everybody commits in a certain repository, and then you go and after committing to that certain repository, you have the baseline that you should build, and you build as fast as possible. Yes, Letizia?
No, I want to say that after this slide, if you can give me 3 minutes for my three last slides.
Yeah, I'll just take the time. So I'll just go fast forward then. So you can clone and do production environment, and then at the end you can do automated deployment. So that's why this is pretty popular approach, because it helps the developers and the end users to obtain the software as soon as possible. And I'll just go through this slide, and then you might continue fast actually continue with the rest of the presentation. So when you do testing, you have this quadrant. Usually you start with unit tests, you move over towards functional tests, integration testing, and then you can start some exploratory testing or acceptance testing from the end users with alpha and beta versions. And then you have the last quadrant, which is performance testing, or testing based on non-functional features. However, this has different implications to different entities. Like when you want to do testing for the team, what supports the team is usually unit and functional testing. So what your team is mainly doing is you test, run the code, and then you obtain some integration, and then you say, okay, this is what we do. And the first is automated, the other one can be automated plus manual. So testing is not about everything being manual. Well, if you want to look at the business side, you have to look at functionality and end user agreement with the test, so acceptance testing. And if you want to criticize the product, then what you do is that, okay, you look at of course, to the acceptance part, but you also look to the features, like, is it running fast enough? Is it doing what is supposed? Is it secure, and so on? And the technology part as well is like unit testing and the features that are in non-functional test in general. I'll just skip this slide. It's about test-driven development, since I want you to show more about the student approaches from last year. Letizia, please, the floor is yours. And if you want to share as well.
No, we don't lose time. I want only to show three examples. This is group 2 from 2018. And I'm not going to criticize them, but I want you to do better this year. When you look in the PowerPoint, you see they have a slide about their software development, and they say Scrum, short time period, large scope, agile, customer validation, adaptable, transparent, Kanban, extreme programming. And then when I go in the document, they write, the team decided to use Scrum as the main development methodology with some elements from Kanban and extreme programming. And for me, this is not enough, because they don't say why they choose this mix of Scrum, Kanban, and extreme programming. And equally important, they don't say which element of Scrum, which element of Kanban, and which element of extreme programming. Unfortunately, this is a sentence that I find often in the document. And this year, I really challenge you not to write sentences like this, but to do decisions and write the truth, what elements of each methodology you choose. And I challenge you now to go back to your customer and say, what do you think about our process? That you as Jorge say, take a proactive approach, and you put the software development as an item that you discuss with the customer and again inside your team. Orges, you can go ahead.
Yeah.
This is another presentation that is a bit better, but at the same time, they also say Scrum plus Kanban. And when Orges show his table about the differences between Scrum and Kanban, then if you say that you choose both, you have to tell me which of the row you choose when you choose Scrum and when you choose Kanban. It's not that you say, I use both and we are happy with that. Do you have comment, Orges?
Yeah, it's good to say, well, the metrics here, like the Scrum, if you use Scrum, then you had the burn down. And if you use Kanban, for instance, then you were releasing fast to the customer, were you sending, or were you waiting for the end of the sprint and so on? So it's important to state, like you say, what is the crucial part of the feature that you use from one framework to the other. So you should state it correctly. You have to be precise. This is the bottom line.
Yes, so go ahead to the next. And we have one group from 2008 that state we use waterfall because there is a defined structure of organization, so it's not 20 years since somebody used waterfall, it's 2 years, because there are possibility to integrate changes at earlier stage, because there is a definitive unlimited scope of the project, and for me, this is not good enough. So I really challenge you not to use waterfall, and if you want to use waterfall, so you have to give me a better explanation of why and what you have learned, and really to problematize about the choices you do. And yes, this concludes our lecture. I hope, for me it was very, I learned a lot from these lectures from Orges, and I would like, if you are brave enough, like we should be in Agile, to switch your microphone off, and we can give Orges an applause to give us such a good and energetic lecture. I'm very grateful, Orges, for
thank you for the invitation, Letizia.
Yes.
I had one comment on waterfall. It seems like it's obsolete, but if you want to build a system like an airplane, or you want to build a system like whatever, like a power plant, or whatever choices you have, critical safety systems, you still have to use these approaches. It's not like you use Agile for everything. It is a good practice. We haven't put the benefits and the drawbacks of Agile in any slide, but of course it has drawbacks as well. So waterfall is not totally redundant today, but of course in software methodologies it's the most popular, like you presented like before. So thank you for the invitation as well.
Thank you very much to all. Thank you to the students for your questions, and see you next week for the lecture about technical writing. And have a lovely evening. Ha det bra allesammans.
Ha det bra. Bye. Thank you.